Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Shayna Anderson. I'm a fourth year medical student at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio.
And my name is Kate Bailey. I'm a fourth year medical student at Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine.
And again, thanks for joining our child neurology resident panel, where we'll hear from six amazing residents who volunteered their time tonight to speak about their journey, insights to residency, their time in residency. We have Dr. Hayden Hatch from Boston Children's Hospital, Dr. Maera Stratton from Johns Hopkins, Dr. Ayush Gupta from University of Louisville, Dr. Andrew Harold from LSU New Orleans, Dr. Rohan Soman from Johns Hopkins, and Dr. Aniela from Nemours Children's Health. So we'll have each residents talk for 8 minutes. I'll let you know when the time is up about their journey to residency, going through the match process, time in residency, any insights that they have. And we'll start with Dr. Hayden Hatch and go from left to right, starting on the top, then going to the bottom. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So you can put your questions in the chat or message Kate directly if you want to remain anonymous. So without further ado, Dr. Hatch, you can get started.
Great. And thanks so much for organizing this panel. I know that sometimes child neuro gets overlooked and there's a lot of focus on adult neurology. So I'm really glad that the NMatch team over the recent years have focused more on child neuro. But congratulations on making it this far, everyone, and choosing the best specialty. I think this is a very exciting time. I know that there was like a recommendation by the Child Neurology Society for like the universal interview offer date of like, I think it was like October 10th or something, but I know that there's still some programs who release interview dates a little later than that. And depending on whether applicants decide not to take the interview, they might send out additional interviews offers after that. But I'm assuming by now, many of you have gotten interview offers, which is awesome. And congratulations on that. And hopefully you'll be getting more as well. But I'm a PGY1 at Boston Children's Hospital. It was my first choice. I went to the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City. I did the MD PhD program there. So I'm a little bit more like research focused. I'm planning to go into research after residency. And my interests are more in like neurogenetics and neurodevelopmental disorders and neurodevelopmental disabilities. So I actually applied to child neurology programs and also neurodevelopmental disability NDD programs, if some of you are familiar with those. So I could answer any questions regarding the interview process for both of those. But I would say just in terms of just like initial advice, I guess just like sort of stepping back, I think child neurology program directors and faculty members and staff like are really interested in taking a holistic approach in reviewing your applications and like trying to understand who you are as like an individual, like a future physician, and just how you interact with patients, like whether they be children or their parents or caregivers, because I think that's really the most important part of this field. It's less focused on like what is the brain anatomy or like what are your achievements or what's your publication record. So before like your next interview, whether it be your first interview or your second or third, I guess just sort of familiarize yourself with like remind yourself with what you said in your application, because you may have like written that or your personal statement like a while ago, or like I know that the hobby section is new this year. We didn't have it last year when I applied. So a lot of the interviewers like were really focused on my hobbies when I interviewed. And I didn't like I said them in my like personal statement and stuff, but just be prepared, like especially those introductory remarks that people make, like to like talk a little bit about your hobbies, because they're really hyper focused on it. I think that goes to show how interested they are in like what you do outside of medical school. And then if there's something that like you're especially interested in when it comes to like child neurology, like if there's a certain subspecialty or like I would also, sort of focus on that, because they're going to ask you why child neurology versus like why not neurology versus why not pediatrics. So be prepared to talk a little bit about why you chose like this specific field because it's unique in many ways. And I guess the other piece of advice I have is this interview season is all about like endurance because like I applied to a bunch of programs and I accepted like a bunch of interview offers and like there were many instances where like I had interviews back to back to back, like on consecutive days. And I just sort of underestimated like how exhausted I would get just sitting in front of the computer screen. So just be prepared for that. And sort of just building your endurance up and like being comfortable talking about yourself and asking questions about the programs and research a little bit about the programs. And like those social hours are super important because those are really the only opportunities you'll have to talk to the residents and see how comfortable they are in their program, and see if like the administration supports them or like what opportunities they have. I know some classic questions people ask during interviews are like, is lunch provided, like the parking, like the living situation, the cost of living, et cetera. Like those are all important questions. I moved to Boston from New York City and like it was already expensive in New York City, but Boston it's still expensive. And like I was sort of like prepared for that. But if you're moving to like a big city that's like expensive on the East Coast or like San Francisco or something like that, be prepared to like ask the residents there like about the salary they're making or like the cost of living or because those are all important factors outside of your residency training and they're going to play a very important impact on how comfortable you are during residency. So I guess I'll stop there. I know I'm like a little short of my time, but I don't want to like ramble on and on and on. And I'm sure these other wonderful residents who are in their neuro years have a lot to say. So I'll pass the torch on.
You. So up next we have Dr. Maera Stratton.
Hi, everybody. This is probably not the first Zoom meeting that you'll have during this season, and you will get very, very used to having lots and lots of Zoom time. I honestly don't know what that's like because as a PGY5, I interviewed before the pandemic changed everything about the match. It was definitely a bit of a different situation, and I think you guys are saving a hell of a lot more money than we did during interview season. Just from that reason, I keep hearing them rumble about whether they're going to go back in person versus all hybrid or versus like a hybrid of some in person and some virtual. And there are drawbacks and benefits to both things. I would say I feel like, and I'll talk about myself and how I got where I am in a minute. But I want to say like the thing that I think is most missing from the virtual is the truly social nature of like social hours with the residents and like getting to spend time with the residents. Because when I interviewed, we went over to a resident's house here in Baltimore because I'm at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And we talked in different groups of people, and like if a conversation didn't interest us, we moved to a different conversation, and like it was just a very different feel, and you could stay as long as you wanted and leave when you didn't want to be there anymore. And then various others, it was, you just got a better feel for, I think, the social cohesiveness of the residency program. You can get some of that on the virtual social hours for sure. But those are going to be important because the people that you see, the residents that you see and how happy or unhappy they are, how much they like their program is absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. Okay, so enough of that for now. I'll come back to tips and things later. I am a very non-traditional person. I had an entire career before I decided to go back to medicine. So I was already 30 when I started medical school. And when I was looking into residency, I went to medical school at GW down in DC. And when I was looking into residency, I had the priorities of childcare and a divorced mom kind of in my mind, because I have a child who is now 9 years old, but at the time was 4, turning 5, something like that. And so for me, it was incredibly important to look at the geography where I was, the support system that I had in any given place, and those kinds of things. I knew that I had to stay in kind of the Mid-Atlantic region because, like I said, I went to GW. My ex lives in DC, so my child goes back and forth between Baltimore and DC now. And so I looked basically from, I don't know, like Richmond, Virginia to New York, and included like Philadelphia. And I didn't go anywhere higher than that or anywhere lower than that. So I was very geographically limited. And I want to say, if that's you, that's okay. You will still match. Okay. And Hopkins ended up being my first choice after interviewing a bunch of places. I interviewed both here in Children's, and I thought going into the interview season that DC Children's or Hopkins would probably end up being the places that I would want to be. I did have one random outlier at the University of Utah because I've got some, well, my child has some retired grandparents out there. And in hindsight, with 2020 being what it was, that may have been a heck of a lot easier on childcare. What with like kindergarten being virtual and everything. But I am ultimately really happy with where I ended up. And I may end up being one of those Johns Hopkins lifers if Hopkins will keep me. So all of that to say, the choice of going into or going to a specific residency program is very individual to what your priorities are. My priorities were getting to a program where I would have time with my child, having the support network to be able to do residency as a divorced mom, and not quit like I thought I was going to at least 20 times a week, all of years 1 through 3. And then it was really important to me that my attendings be approachable and my fellow residents be people that I actually wanted to work with. And so those were the top things that I looked for in my residency interview season, was looking at the people that were the students who were with me on the social hours and things like that, or not the students, sorry. Yes, the students who were with me for the interviews, to see, you know, like, are these all people that do they feel like my people? Is this affirming my choice? The residents on the social hours and things like that, do they seem like the kind of people that I would want to work with? Because you are basically living together. You're not, I mean, you do have the same stink. We get on each other's nerves all the time about needing to clean our own damn dishes, and nobody's mother works at our team room. But you work a large amount of the time and you spend some very intense experiences with these people, or people like them. And then your attendings have to be people who will actually listen to what you say, and who actually are interesting people to you. They don't have to be the person whose book you sleep with on your nightstand or whatever. They can just be people who can spend an hour talking to you about Doctor Who, which I think is how I got into Johns Hopkins as a resident, because I spent my interview with Eric Kossoff talking about Doctor Who, and with Lisa Sun talking about podcasts and murder mysteries and things like that. So, you know, like, the interview is surprisingly little about the medicine, because you're not expected to know and remember everything that you learn in medical school. You are coming to residency to learn the hands-on things. What you can't learn as well is the social interactions and the being like a whole person. And so that's why that like hobbies question, that my predecessor, Hayden Hatch, spoke about, why that question is so important, is because you have to be able to live and work with the people you're going to be with for the next 5 years of your life, maybe even more. As far as other things, the resident social hours are incredibly important. I know by the time you get to those, you're exhausted, or, you know, you're like, I just want to relax, not do anything else. And you should try to relax a little bit. Like, they are people. Okay. We are people. Um, but the residents in the program actually have a fair amount of say and input on who ends up ranked and how they end up ranked. I don't believe that Dr. Soman, who is coming later, has seen this process yet because this is his first year in neurology at Johns Hopkins. But towards the end of the year, after when you guys all submit your rank lists, and while we're getting ready to submit our rank lists, there's a big meeting with the whole department where they run through with a picture of all the applicants up on the screen and ask us what we thought of you guys. And so it is actually really quite important because they really do care what we have to say. They want people who work well together because you guys, we run the hospital. Okay. You do. Don't feel like an imposter, but you will feel like an imposter. We do run the hospital. Okay.
I hate to stop you, but that
Yep.
was the 8 minutes. Thank you so much for
Please
sharing
do.
your story and how you got to where you are today.
Mhm.
Next up, we have Dr. Ayush Gupta.
Right. Well, I'll just carry on the conversation that we have, the people before me did. So, full disclosure, I am PGY5 University of Louisville, and I am the recruitment chief this year for our residency program. But my predecessors said, definitely we are looking at you in terms of your personality. Congratulations that you have made a decision to join this wonderful subspecialty of child neurology, and you will do great. There is no question, wherever you go, child neurology is one of the most fulfilling branches in medicine, and actually one of the specialties with highest satisfaction rate. So you will be fine. But the question is, where you want to match is where you want to live for 5 years. So it's not just the medicine side of thing. You will do great with medicine side, but if you don't have a good personal life, you don't have a balance, then there are really high chances that you will burn out somewhere here or there. So my 2 cents will be very limited. Of course, I want you to know that child neurology people look into the applications in much more details, probably. They are almost like learning about you non-medically. And most of the discussions will be about how you will deal with the common social scenarios. How will you be a person that can work in that hospital and people can rely on you for making major decisions? Um, I also want to throw a shameless plug on the beauty of child neurology because it's just not, for example, I am going to adult neuroimmunology fellowship and I'm going to practice both children and adults. But that is one of the niches that you can actually do being in child neurology. You can do child neurology, you can do neurodevelopmental disabilities, you can be a developmental pediatrician with child neurology expertise, you can be a pediatrician, and you can also be an adult neurologist. So please don't feel that child neurology is like a specialty which is just limited. So that's what I will just say. And then finally, looking into the programs, trying to figure out where you match. Of course, expenses, quality of life, mentorship is very important in child neurology. We are a small group. We have 700 or so child neurologists in the United States at this point. So if you have a particular interest, make sure you find a mentor in your program that can support you, that can sponsor you. That is like the biggest thing that I will say will make or break your career. So looking at all the things that people said before me, I just wanted to add this part. And I think that's where I will stop.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Dr. Andrew Harold.
So hi there. Like everyone said, I'm a third year resident over in LSU in New Orleans. So I agree with everything that's pretty much been said up to this point. I'll kind of go into a little bit of my background. So I as well was like a non-traditional student. So I was actually an art major before I went into medicine, and I was like I was doing graphic design and doing all these other things, and then went back to med school. I'm originally from Kansas City, and so if anybody's in the old KC, love all of that. And went to med school up there, and I was lucky in the sense that when it came time for me to apply for child neuro, child neuro is a small, like everybody has said, it's a very small program. And furthermore, there's not usually too many programs in each state. So there's usually only one or two. Every once in a while, you go to the state that has, like 3 or 4 programs, which is great. But I was kind of in a region of the United States where I was like, if I'm gonna do this, I really need to be. I didn't have a ton that was like holding me back into one space. I didn't have kids or a significant other, and so I applied very broadly. I applied all over the United States, East Coast, West Coast, South, and everything. And LSU was actually my second choice. And I am very happy. I think the thing that struck me the most about kind of tips and something that I would focus on for yourself is finding a good fit for the program is, I think, more important. All of the little like, oh, do you work a four on one off? That all is less important than I think finding people that you get along with and you are inspired by. I 100% agree with a couple of the people that have said, like, I sat and talked with the programs, the top 3 programs that I ranked, like as my top 3, were I had like easy conversations with. It was like I was talking about normal stuff. My program director that I interviewed with at LSU, she and I talked about musicals for the entire hour. And then she at the very end, she was like, oh shoot, I guess I gotta ask you an actual question I forgot about that. What do you think about this? And I was like, this. Okay, cool. Log off. And then we went to the next interview. So it was like we sat and talked about all these other things. And I just felt really like I vibed with them. And I know that's a weird, like, that's not very, there's not a dictionary term for that. But I mean, I would try to say, like, try to be yourself. Don't, be your best, don't just be a slob or whatever. I doubt any of you are, but really try to focus on being you and showing programs who you are, and they will hopefully be showing you who they are, and you can get the best fit. I was lucky that I did interview during COVID restrictions, so we were Zoom, so I kind of remember that, although the Zoom, it's changed. I feel like every year it changes a little bit. Other things that I would say keep in mind is child neuro is a rare specialty where even if you match, there's usually only, 1 to 5 a year. So I'm the only one in my program. So I'm a 1 a year. And if any of you have questions about that specifically, I can go into that. I think there's pluses and minuses to both sides. I think the great thing about being child neuro is that you get to be the sole focus of your program. For me, I love that because my attendings are solely focused on me. We are also not resident run, so our service is not resident dependent. Our attendings take a lot of our call with us so that we are not, we're not just the only ones running the service like you are on peds. Other things that I think are really important for you guys would say resident social hours are really important. I can tell you, trying to just get a feel for the people that I'm going to work with, and especially like you guys. So like as a third year, your third, fourth, and fifth years generally work together depending on the program. Some programs will have the third years completely off in adult land. For us, we still do call at Children's. We still do like our clinics at Children's, our didactics at Children's. So I'm still working with my fifth year so for me, I'm still really engaged in making sure that, I can interact with you guys. I can vibe because I'm going to share an office. We're going to talk. We're going to take call. We're going to share. You're going to give me sign out. And I want to make sure that whole gestalt, it just feels normal and it's easy. So being yourself is really important. That all to be said, but it's been said 100 times now. Other things is, if you're looking for applying broadly, don't feel bad telling people that too. Have a good reason. If you're not applying and you've never been there. So I had never been to New Orleans before I matched. And people ask, they're like, why do you want to move down here? If you've never been here, why do you want to be here? And I was very honest with them. I said, I'm looking to explore. I'm looking to grow as a person. I haven't been to a lot of these places. If I had $1 billion, maybe I would have, but I don't. All student loans. So you just being honest about what you're looking for. If you really are isolated and saying, I need this one area because all my family's here, I have a significant other, I have kids, whatever your situation is, just being honest, and being transparent. And don't try to, cozy up and just be, I don't want to say fake, but you know what I mean. That's really important. So I feel like I could belabor on and everything, but I'll kind of call it there and let everybody else go.
Thank you. I'm not from Kansas City, but I'm from mid-Missouri, so I've been to Kansas City quite a
Oh,
few
very
times.
nice. You gotta love it.
Yeah. So up next we have Dr. Rohan Soman.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here, and I'm really happy that this opportunity exists now for so many people moving to the match process, because it is an interesting and daunting process in many ways, I think. I'll also try and be pretty brief. I grew up in Ohio. I did my MD PhD in New York City at Weill Cornell, and then I came here to Hopkins to join Maera, and we have a lovely little program over here that we'd be happy to tell you about at a different time. Um, so I, along with Andrew, am a third year, and so I applied during COVID restrictions. I think we were the second group of applicants doing entirely virtual applications. So everything was very new. And in that sense, we didn't have a lot of guidance. So I think we were told things like just apply broadly, scattershot everywhere, interview everywhere. I spent 3 months interviewing almost every single day. It was miserable and it didn't need to be done. And it was bad for me and it was bad for the schools. But I think one of the benefits that came out of that is you really get to see a lot of different programs and you get to see what's important to them and what's important to you, right? And I think using this little blurb that we're all doing up front is a way to really jump off, because I really do think the Q&A section is the most important. But some things that I think are important to think about is that in child neurology, the programs they're looking for people who are good neurologists, right? And good pediatricians. And what do you need to be a neurologist? You need to be, observant, I think is the main thing. And what do you need to be a pediatrician? You need to be very empathetic. And so when you're going into these interviews, I agree wholeheartedly with Andrew. The best way to do an interview is to be yourself and to be genuine and be honest and be like, hey, like, this is the reason why I want to interview with you guys. This is the type of person I am. And that's what we're all looking for, as someone who can be a good colleague that we trust, that we can work well with, right? So I really think, especially in this field, it's less important to stress about the academic side of things and more important to stress the personal connection. And I'm going to say mostly I'll leave it at that point, and we can move on to Aniela. But I'm happy to talk about many other things during the question and answer section, including research, including geography questions, family situation questions, and how to advocate for yourself at an institution.
Thank you. And last but not least, we have Dr. Aniela.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I think it's hard to go last because all these points are very good, and I have very similar feelings about everything that's been said. So I was an IMG. I'm originally from Poland. I grew up in Poland. Then I came here for high school as an exchange student, went back to Poland for med school, and came back for residency. So if any of the med students are IMGs, I'm happy to answer questions later after that too. I think mostly when you get to this point and you already have interview invites, that means the programs already like you. The programs already want to interview you. So you don't really have to tell them all about your research, all about the papers you wrote, about your tests and scores and things like that. But mostly about like who you are as a person and why you would be a good fit to that program. But it's also the flip side. You're also interviewing them, and you're really, at this point, like they want you, and you should know the questions you want to ask them to make sure that they're a good fit for you. Whether it's the people in the hospital, the size of the program, the location, whatever is important for you, but you're going to move for 5 years. So it's going to be a very, very long time. I think getting to fifth year, I'm a fifth year now. I didn't realize how long it's going to be. I'm thankful to have my significant other who moved with me. So it was great to have that support, but otherwise it's the support of the co-residents that become your family. My program, my PEDS program is a very big program. It has 20 some residents. Then my adult year had about 10 residents, and I'm the only PEDS neuro resident in my year. So you really feel like you have all these friends, but then you're also sort of lonely in every part of that process. So finding your support, no matter where you go, is very important. I find that support in our faculty too. So I think child neuro is such a small field. They will become your colleagues for life. I interviewed for residency with the same people that I interviewed for fellowship. I went to a bunch of conferences and I met the same people all over again. I went to the conferences with my attending, and they met their previous residents, their previous mentors. So we're really like one big little child neuro family, and we're gonna cross paths like the whole life. So it's important to make friends everywhere too, and make a good impression on your interview trail, because you never know when you're going to meet these people again. I matched to also a child and adult program for neuroimmunology, just like Ayush. So, and it was also virtual interviews, so I got a little taste of that. And I matched to University of Iowa, which I've also never been, and also had to figure out ways how to spend it. I want to move to Iowa from Poland, but just be yourself during the interviews. That's all we really look for. I think I also underestimated how much we're involved in the process as a fifth-year resident, and either last year and the year before. We have a slot that we basically interview the med students, and we participate in the match, and we participate in the ranking list. And we've had both people that we like residents really, really loved and said they're such a good person, but they just didn't interview well. But we worked with them before, or during our happy hour, they were so nice and made sense that they would work well with us. And that had moved them up, versus we had people that really didn't appreciate residents and could be condescending and things like that, but interviewed great with the faculty. So it's important how you interact with residents too. Just remember that it kind of sucks because you're always watched no matter where you are, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say. But just be yourself, and you'll find a place where you want to go, and it'll work out. So I think that's basically all I have to say.
Thank you guys so much for all the great information, advice, your stories, journeys, everything. So now we're going to open it up to the Q&A, and Kate will be taking over for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. If our attendees would like to start putting some questions in the chat, and then I will start addressing them from the chat, and then our lovely panelists can also jump in if they see one that they want to answer.
I do have a question just to start it off. How did you guys navigate finding housing in such a short notice, like moving either across states or to different areas?
So I moved from Poland during COVID. I moved 2020 across the Atlantic. It wasn't easy. I honestly reached out to a bunch of residents that were on the interview trail, and in the programs I was interested in, even before match and then definitely after match, and just asked them for advice. Like, I know we have a running list of where our residents live. So we would just send that off, and that was very helpful because it's hard to find, what's safe and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that whenever I was moving, so since I think you're kind of lucky that since you don't have to go to every single spot, you actually have a little saved money. So what I did is I said, okay, my top three programs I'm going to go and visit before I rank them, just to like, I'm just going to go and visit the cities. I'm going to go make sure the city is looking good because they told me about all of that, but is it true? And so like I went and saw a bunch of the cities, and while I was there, I was just kind of meandering and then kind of looked at housing prices while I was there. And then once I matched, I took another trip to actually go look for housing. So it kind of allowed me to say, like, generally speaking, I think most people get their top couple of choices, if not their first or second choice. So I was lucky in that I just said, okay, I'm going to go see my first three and then go from there. And once I did, then I found a spot pretty quickly and asked residents.
Yeah, I think like during our resident hour, I think we typically have some like a little bit of a PowerPoint that's about the different areas of Baltimore and like the best places to eat and like the best places to hang out in Baltimore and everything. And then actually on match day, after you guys get your news that you've matched to whatever program, the program directors will reach out to you immediately. And there will be resources almost guaranteed amongst all of the information that you then get in the floodgate of information about different areas that the residents live, because you don't remember all of the places that all of the residents at all of the programs that you interviewed at lived. And there will be information that you can ask for as well. Like, can you put me in touch with some of your residents so I can like figure out how to do this?
Thank you.
Okay, so the next question was, is there any questions that you didn't ask but wished you had asked during interviews?
I'll take a first stab at that, and then anyone else who can answer can. I think this is a common thing that I've heard from a lot of different applicants over the past couple of years, and I felt it the same way myself. Like, I don't even know what to ask. I don't know how to ask what I need to ask to get the information I need to make a good decision. And I think a good way to think about this is you've already made the decision, which is that you want to go into child neurology. That's the most important decision. Everything else is more or less details. And I think of those details, you've heard from every single one of us, the most important detail is, are people happy? And will I be happy with these people? So whether that for you is there a good food scene here? Is there good childcare here? Can I afford to live here? The things that will make you happy are the questions that are important to ask. We will be the people who are there at those happy hours. People like us will be there. And we are just like you guys. I think the people who volunteer to do this really want to give you an honest and unbiased opinion of how their life is going, because we don't want to make you guys miserable just to come and join our program. And we really want to make sure it's a good fit for everybody. So I think those are the types of questions that are most important.
I want to take from this answer as well. As an international medical graduate, I think a lot of IMGs don't tend to ask questions that should be asked. And one of them is, of course, I know DEI is such a big thing, but has the program actually had residents from different diverse backgrounds, and has the program ever had international medical graduates specifically? Because that can make a huge difference, because there's a lot of processing and a lot of things that you can do, you cannot do, and knowing that from the get-go is really helpful. So yeah, I think that will be one of the questions to ask.
Yeah, I think another thing going off of that is try to see if there are certain like affinity groups or certain diversity groups that you identify with that can serve as additional support systems. And sometimes these groups can hold events, trips, or sometimes some programs have protected time for certain things. Like I know here at Boston Children's, like for Juneteenth, like all of the Black residents, like we're protected, and there's a separate like diversity flex pool of residents who can cover for us during that day, or even things like we're trying to get for Boston Pride, getting that day off so we can be covered by allies within the program. So I think those are definitely helpful for your residency experience, trying to see if there are groups that you identify with and seek out additional support systems.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's actually a question that I did ask, but it's a question that, like, looking back, I'm really happy I always asked, because it was something that I felt like a lot of people didn't. Is I asked specifically the residents, I'm like, what is one thing about your program you wish you could change? Because I found that a lot of people had complaints. And I mean, I know we all have complaints. You will never find a program that is perfect. If anybody tells you it's all glitz and glittery and there's absolutely no issues, they're lying to your face. Like, there's always going to be problems. And I think it is very important, and I think I can share this with everybody, that I know what like our program's strengths are, and I also then know, okay, well, that's something that I will tell people. And if that is a big weakness for you, that's okay. That's okay to say, like, okay, thank you for telling me, and then jot that down, and maybe you don't use that program, or maybe you do. But being honest and asking those hard questions that you might feel like saying, like, oh my gosh, is that appropriate for me to ask? Yes, that's fine. This is a job. This is 5 years of your life. If you don't ask those questions now, you'll learn it anyways, so you might as well ask.
And piggybacking on that, I found it really helpful to ask, like, what was one change that the program has made recently? Why did they make it? And what is, like, do they listen to you when you tell them about things that are problems? Are they making changes in response to those things? I think that's really important, because you are working really hard in these years, and it's going to be really difficult in a lot of ways. And they're like, I think Andrew, right? Sorry, Andrew. Like Andrew was saying, no program is perfect. So what are they doing about the things that they're not perfect at?
And also, going back off of that, I think if the program gives you a bad vibe, just remember that and write that down, because on paper they might look great. But then if, like, the residents gave you a weird vibe, or maybe they don't really have a big diversity, things like that, if it just felt weird, just remember that when you're doing your rank list, because you might forget that, and it's going to be very important to your day-to-day life.
Okay. Kind of going along a similar line of questioning, are there any questions you enjoy being asked during the resident social hours?
I love talking about food.
Personal things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff you do outside of residency.
I love just getting to know them. I'm like, oh, cool. Look at you. You're a classically trained opera singer. You play a violin. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I don't. That's so cool. Tell me about it.
I really like hearing their stories and their past experiences, not just for specific to child neurology, but in general, like medicine. We talk a lot about finances in medicine, and kind of things that I guess are off the topic and considered like, oh, general things.
Yeah, and I met the same applicants like at multiple schools, which we would just like show up on Zoom. I'm like, oh, it's you again, and we'd like chat in like the Zoom chat saying, hey, what's up? How are you doing? And then There were some in-person second look events that I went to, and then I saw them at those, and we met in person. And then now I'm in a program with many of the people that I saw on the interview trail as well, and they're like my best friends already. So just like get to know the other applicants, because there's a good chance you'll match with them and then work with them.
And I'm gonna add to Hayden there, don't restrict that stuff to only the chats, because if you have those chats with your fellow like applicants, it's actually gives like something for the rest of the conversation with the residents to continue and go off of as well. Like do some of the talking and chatting amongst yourselves. It is really helpful to just kind of like keep things going too.
Great. I had another question. Can some of you speak about being in smaller versus larger size programs, and maybe some pros, cons, or differences between those different types of programs?
I can take that because I've seen my program go from 1 resident a year to 3. So yeah, there is definitely, when you have more people, there is more flexibility in scheduling. You have more levy. I think you can bargain, especially with adult neurology residents. I don't know how other programs work, but we also take calls in adult neurology years in adult neurology itself. So we also get some area to bargain and have more coverage from adult neurology residents when they come to our side. So definitely having a larger program has reduced our work hours significantly, but also given us a chance to see different perspectives of different people and their ways of working, and how the interactions happen amongst each other, but also between attendings and residents. When our program was a small program, which was about 3 years ago, I did see a lot of like it was one and done. We have inpatient nurse practitioners that cover our inpatient service as well. So there was like a lot of, frankly speaking, a lot more work hours, but also the academics was also influenced by that, because the discussions were not, between learners. It was just a resident amongst 10 or 11 attendings who are just very experienced in their field. So that I could see the difference in the level of academia when you have more discussions from learners who are learning currently and they are up to date on latest things versus old school neurology. So that mixture was really interesting to see how it evolved. So those are my 2 big things.
I could also speak on the larger end of things at Boston Children's Hospital. During the pediatrics years, we have between 50 and 60 peds residents per year. And then for the neuro years, we take like 6 we might go up to 7 child neuro applicants per year. And then we have like the 1 neurodevelopmental disability applicant. But it is a large program, and we're technically the pediatrics residency program is the Boston combined residency program, because it's Boston Children's, but it's also Boston Medical Center, and then we share the pediatrics years between the 2 hospitals. So you're doing rotations at both hospitals, but there's some rotations that you do at Brigham and Women's, at MGH, at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. And your adult neuro year is actually broken up among those last 3 years in the child neurology, where you're doing adult neuro at MGH, you're doing it at BI, Beth Israel, and you're doing it at Mass General, Beth Israel, and another hospital. But basically, like, you get to see a lot, being a very large hospital that subspecializes in a lot of different things. That being said, there are a lot of fellows, and those fellows like tend to be the first ones to do certain procedures, and so you might not be able to do certain procedures unless like you specifically ask to do them. So I'd say that's one of the downsides of like a larger program. The other downside is because even though we are a large program, there are a lot of services we cover, and very often is the case where you're the only intern on a certain service. On some services, there aren't even like fellows or anything. So it's just you and an attending, which can sort of be isolating. But you do get to see a lot, and I think it'll prepare you for any subspecialty that you want to end up going into. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that from oh, sorry, do you mind, or do you want
Oh,
me to?
go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. If we need to move on too, that's fine. Uh,
No, you go ahead.
okay. Yeah, I was gonna say from a small program, and I interviewed at, so I remember when I was applying, I was kind of between. I was like, do I want a big program or a small program? And I ultimately got a small program, and looking back, I'm actually more happy that it's very focused on me. So because I'm the only one every year, and when you join in, you're part of, for us, there's about 20 or so peds residents, and then you're kind of the one child neuro. And so the first 2 years are really just your peds training. I mean, you're not doing too much with neuro. And then once you start getting into the adult and child side for us, um, the nice thing about being the only one a year is that the program is focused on me, and they kind of cater to what I want. If I'm saying like, hey, I'm really focused, so like for me, I'm really interested in epilepsy, and I love that. That's what I want to try to work at doing. And those are my interests. And they're like, here, let's build your program this year for you into that. Because they don't have to say, oh, well, you have to cover this because there's so many residents. So it's very, that is really nice. The program is all there for me in a sense. And then furthermore, I get to work very closely with my attendings. I think that's a benefit dependent on your learning style as well. For me, I love hearing and questioning people and saying like, why do you think that? Why are you wanting to do it this way? Like what guidelines, and being able to talk to the attending. That resident to resident learning is helpful too, but the resident to attending, that was just something that I really enjoyed. And something that I got in my being a DO, we did that so much in med school as well, where we were working one-on-one with attending. So it fit. Now, downsides to that is that you're kind of a lone soldier. You're really trekking through every stage by yourself. So even when you're on your peds side, there's the peds are generally pretty good. And our program was great in that they really tried to make it like, hey, you're part of us, but you're still not, because you're on an accelerated 2-year course to get through all of your peds. So you're doing things out of sync with your class anyways. And then you switch to adult and you're by yourself again. And that's now you're completely away from your peds and now you're there. So that you just have to have different support systems, and you have to say, and I thought that, I really wanted a cohort. I wanted a class of people. And I still think in some ways that is beneficial, but I'm not unhappy with this choice. I would say that I think I've learned that there's a lot of benefits to what I have, that I couldn't predict. So you kind of have to be open to that, and asking those questions.
Okay, let's try to address one last question. I got an anonymous question. Um, how would you approach discussing a perceived weakness on our application? Would you recommend bringing this up during our interviews to offer our perspective, or waiting for them to bring it up?
That's a very good question, actually. And I mean, we understand that every person has certain set of weakness, but how that weakness applies to your day-to-day working as a resident is important. And also how you are able to take care of that, or are you working on it so that by the time you start your residency, it's gonna be better. So I think there's no right or wrong answer here. You can bring it up, but I think we will, if this is something that's going to affect how your residency is going to be, then we will definitely bring this up in the interview. And the correct answer is just to be yourself and telling that you are experiencing this, but you are working on this.
Yeah, I think that it's important to be honest, and then most importantly show like what it has taught you, because what we all have weaknesses, we all have imperfections, just like the programs all have imperfections and weaknesses, and they need to explain to you, you know, like what they're trying to do to make things better. What they want to know about from you is how are you learning from that weakness, and how is that weakness then informing your like worldview and how you will be a resident for them.
And I would say, I think you know, I don't know exactly what specifically, and it doesn't matter in this in a true sense, but I find a lot of people will very much so hold on to those like feelings of, oh gosh, I have this failure, I don't want to show it. And in some ways, if you kind of just own it and you say, this is me, this is my life, this is my experience, we all have those things. I find a lot of people, and other people can go in, I feel like a lot of it's usually academic, like a course failure, a board failure, some sort of something like that. And if you just own it and you say like, hey, I had this issue, this is what I've done to work on it, we're honestly, we don't expect anybody to be perfect. You'll learn your attendings aren't perfect. So it's like there's not this idea that, oh, you have to have no failures. You just have to be honest and being able to say like, hey, I'm getting better. I'm doing these things to get better. I'm trying hard, because really a program is looking for somebody that they can be, that is malleable and will grow, and not just somebody who's already perfect, because if so, they'd be hiring and attending, and that's just not the case. So just think
And
of
your
it like,
attendings aren't perfect either.
exactly.
Thank you all so much for attending our child neurology NMatch Insights from Residents panel. And let's give a silent round of applause for our residents for taking time out of their busy schedules for and joining us this evening. It looks like a couple of the residents are putting their emails in the chat if you have any questions afterwards. And so feel free to grab that out of the chat before you leave the meeting. And again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Make sure to follow NMatch on both X and Instagram to keep up to date on our latest initiatives.